All right. We didn't capture that online, so no.
Who told you?
Connie told me, so I'm usually oblivious. So that's my
little brother. Nice, thank you.
I'll bet you could guess that.
Mary.
Add a little something extra to your coffee today. You deserve it.
We got to go visit Lily and Heidi and Max yesterday.
Awesome.
And that was really sweet.
Oh, yeah.
Very cool.
Good.
Amazing how expressive she is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She's been talked to a lot.
I bet you got more pictures again, huh?
Well, we've been getting pictures this week.
Oh, good.
We got to see her in real life though, and that's something.
Do
Very
they
cool.
FaceTime you at all?
They're encouraging us to get different phones.
Oh, you can't do that on your phone?
Actually, I think we can with WhatsApp.
I mean, do
We
you got an
don't.
iPad or anything?
Yeah.
That'd be even better.
Yeah, we could Zoom.
Yeah.
Well,
No, that's not.
so here's the deal.
We got a choir ready.
So like last week, I told
We got a
you.
choir ready to go.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Last week I said my plan for Lent was actually to not go by the readings, the weekly readings, but I actually found this nice 5-week series that was really intriguing. It dealt with repentance, which is a great Lenten theme, obviously. And so we were going to ditch the Old Testament readings for the following weeks and use these other readings, Old Testament readings, and so follow in this line of the series that I don't do series. I don't like series. If there's a point to make, I don't want to stretch it out. I just want to get to it. So I was going to give it a shot. This is going to be something new for me. Needless to say, I'm preaching on the gospel today. And I'll explain why in the sermon. And I don't necessarily want to take up a lot of time talking about it here. I'll actually have probably some time after church to talk about it 10 years ago, because Ann Arbor was having financial problems. So Concordia, Wisconsin took oversight of it. They were still kind of two entities, but under one umbrella. So we've known that Concordia Ann Arbor has been like the fastest growing private institution in the state. We've had record enrollment there last year. It's been great. We've heard in conventions and conferences that they're doing well. And then the president of the Concordia, Wisconsin, Ann Arbor, whatever, sent out a message last Wednesday basically saying this is a new president, he's only been there for a year, said that they undertook a financial health audit of the universities just to make sure that they're on the right path, whatever. And it turned out that there's such a financial deficit especially for next year for Ann Arbor, to the tune of $5 million plus a few other things, I guess, that they would have to likely cancel or cut programs, sell off property at Ann Arbor, effectively only keeping the profitable programs and maintaining the mission and profitable programs. No idea what this means. No clue what this means whatsoever. Other than reduction in workforce, laying off staff, cutting programs, yada, yada. News to all the staff, faculty, students there, they had heard nothing of this until last week. Nobody had, honestly. And of course, this hits us because Caitlin was accepted to Ann Arbor, was planning to go into her family ministry program. We have no idea what's going on. Nobody knows. The president said that the Board of Regents meets in 2 weeks, and they'll be expecting a plan on what to do. And the president seems to already have kind of said, well, this is the plan. We're going to... So, no idea. No clue. Everybody's just shell-shocked by it. This comes on, in the last 5 years we had Concordia in the Bronxville.
Bronx.
In New York closed, Concordia Selma closed, Concordia Portland closed, Concordia Austin is no longer affiliated with the LCMS. They're still technically, I guess, Lutheran, but they're
Couple
not.
lawsuits over.
Well, yeah, they're trying to break away essentially, while maintaining fidelity to Lutheran doctrine. So this is a huge thing. So, and what I'll do is I'll announce it after church so that if anyone is interested for basically what I just said, some details, I'll probably bring people in here to explain a little bit more. The district, so the Concordia Ann Arbor is not part of the district, even though it's here. Concordia University Ann Arbor is under the Concordia University system. Okay, it's a synod kind of thing. It's just because it's in Ann Arbor, Concordia or the district has a lot of connection with it. So this has nothing to do with the Michigan district. Like the Michigan district is not responsible for this whatsoever. We're just like, the district itself is like, what's going on? So the plan, the only plan that we know of, the only thing that we do know is that the Michigan district has undertaken a plan to, in the next 2 weeks, solicit pledges of funds. So basically, anyone who would donate, businesses, people, individuals, whatever, to try to get $5 million in pledges, to then take that to the Board of Regents in 2 weeks and say effectively like, look, you need $5 million to make next year happen. Here's $5 million. Don't do anything rash. Like, don't make a decision in 2 weeks to effectively close most of the school. Give it some time so that we can pray about it, so we can seek out a different way. We can find different ways that we can come together and continue this going on. There's no guarantee that the Board of Regents will accept that. We have no idea. So that was Wednesday. So I don't know what's happened around here Thursday or Friday, honestly.
Hey, how does that happen if it's effectively run by the synod?
Well, it's not run by Synod. It's run by the Concordia University System Board of Regents. So it's like a separate entity that is, I don't know, it's affiliated with Synod. It's Synod.
It's like a subgroup or.
Yeah, it's like the Synod doesn't fund.
Well, I guess what
I mean,
I'm
they
wondering
support
is
it,
how
but-
does one all of a sudden come up with a
That's
bankruptcy when others are good?
the $5 million question apparently. We don't know.
There's no oversight over their finances throughout the years?
There seems to have been. I mean, they've had accountings of things that appear to be fine. I have no idea. I don't know.
But they
This
haven't
seems
shared,
odd.
they haven't shared the financial information now either, which is really confusing. I mean, God bless President Davis at this point for doing what he can, but
Yeah.
it's hard to make a $5 million request when you don't even know kind of how that, that's this year. It
Well,
gives
that's
them
just
time.
a pledge.
He's buying time, he's trying to keep them from doing something drastic, but is next year's loss 10 million? Is next year's loss? You there's no story being told, nobody's sharing any financial information.
Yeah,
I mean,
we don't
to just
know.
come up with this all of a sudden, that's terrible.
Well, and they
Yeah.
expanded the
Right.
campus recently. My gut feeling is it has to be related to debt in some way, that somehow the loans, because they built that whole nursing program. I mean, they were touting that a year ago. The church extension fund helped them fund that whole new nursing and medical program, and I think maybe some stuff has come due that they can't
Possibly.
fund. I
And,
mean,
and
who
it's
knows?
the same. They're saying the same thing about Concordia, Wisconsin. Well, not the same thing. They're looking at reducing staff at Concordia, Wisconsin too.
Yeah.
But it's just they're saying that the financial strain is more acute with Ann Arbor. So it's like the whole thing is there's a problem, but Ann Arbor for whatever reason, and again we don't know what the reason is. I assume because like President Davis says he's been talking to them. I assume this might not even be a safe assumption, seeing what they're seeing. But we don't know. Nobody's said like we don't know. All we've heard from officially from the the people in charge at the system is just like, oh, there's a huge, we can't afford it, so we're going to have to strip things down. From the district is where we heard like Davis said, well, we found out that there's a $5 million deficit for next year. I don't know what else they found out. I mean, it's very distressing to say the least. So,
Well, there was no indication at the last convention in any of their reports that.
well, no, they had record enrollment last year,
Yeah,
and
that's all you heard
they
about.
continued. I mean,
Yeah.
they've had up
Yeah,
until
but
last
obviously
week.
the enrollment's not supporting the school.
Well, obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
But again, there was no like, we haven't in the last 2 years received anything like, hey guys, go make sure your churches are supporting Concordia because we need, it's tough out there.
Yeah.
And it's tough for private schools all across the country. I mean, a lot of private schools are having the same kinds of issues. But it's just there hasn't been a lot of transparency. Communication has been lacking severely. So yeah, it's very stressful. In my house particularly, it's been very stressful. So you can imagine that when I looked at like the readings and I see, oh, the Holy Gospel is Jesus is in the wilderness being tempted by Satan. I'm like, hey, this might preach well this week. So the gospel is what we're going to hear today in the message. So we can talk about it. I don't want I hate to spoil anything for you, but we can talk about the gospel if you want. If you want, like I said, if you want to talk more about Concordia, I'm going to. Why? I'll be happy to, but I'm going to do it after church because I'll make just kind of an announcement about being able to talk about it. And honestly, there's for anybody who does want to try to help by pledging something, there's a special way to go about it because a lot of people are like, well, I need to send my money to Concordia. It's like, no. You need to pledge money to the district for their special Save Concordia plan, which is why they're just doing the pledges is because we don't know if it's even going to be accepted. So they don't want to collect I mean, it'd be fantastic if they can collect $5 million in 2 weeks. That'd be awesome. But then, if nothing comes of it, then it's like, okay, well now they got to either give it all back or whatever. So, so we can discuss all of that in more detail later. We'll pray for them in the prayers, obviously, but keep the students there, the faculty, the staff. I mean, they're just rocked. Keep all the future students. Caitlin, my personal stake in this is keep her in your prayers. I'm pretty sure she'll be here today. You probably won't see her except in the service. She just does not want to talk about it. I mean, she knows that you all care about her and are concerned. So she's very grateful for that. But she's just like she's been like.
Well, then the second reading is most applicable.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that one works too. Well, before I get into that, it's funny because when Heather and I deal with things, we're always like we're very compatible. And if she goes this way, I go this way, or so she's taken up the anger space. Like she's pissed. I've taken up the very sorrowful, like sympathetic space, which has been fun. So as part of my sympathetic thing on Thursday, I took Caitlin out after work. We had lunch, and then I took her over to High Caliber. They have these rage rooms where you get all this stuff, and you basically go in, there's all this stuff that you can smash. You throw bottles against the wall. There's a computer monitor that you can smash with a sledgehammer. She had 15 minutes. She was a lot happier after that. Those things are awesome.
That did feel good.
It gets a lot of, at first, I got a video of the whole thing. At first, she's like, takes a bottle, and she's like, throws it against the wall. I'm like, okay, I don't know. Then towards the end, she's like, bang, 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 bang. Get the sledgehammer, like, whack! I was like, go to it, kid, right on. Yeah, the second reading is excellent too. Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial. For when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. You could stop right there, and that applies. You definitely have the rest of it is dealing with more with temptation. Which of course the gospel deals with temptation. But the fun thing is that, and I point this out in the sermon, in Mark's account of the temptation of Jesus, we'll just look at it. What's missing from the account here? In those days, he was baptized, he came out. So begin with Mark's account of the temptation of Jesus, 2 verses. The Spirit immediately drove him out into the wilderness. He was in the wilderness 40 days being tempted by Satan, and he was with the wild animals, and the angels were ministering to him.
Wow.
What's missing?
That's a condensed version.
The specific exchange between
Yeah.
Satan and
The temptations. It's like, here's the temptation of Jesus. Okay? And it's gone. It's nowhere. But I think there's reason there. There's value. And I bring it out in the message today. So we can talk about that. You can pick.
related to the James reading.
Yes.
It says, let no one say when he is tempted, I am being tempted by God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. Then why in the Lord's Prayer do we say, lead us not into
temptation? We can say, you'd look at something like the gospel reading and say, did God tempt Jesus or did Satan tempt Jesus? We say, well, Satan tempted him. God led him there. It's actually really interesting that Mark even says the Spirit immediately drove him out into the wilderness. The word drove is cast out. I mean, the image is like, the Spirit is, all right, Jesus, go out there. Throws him into the wilderness, compels him to go, forces him to go. That's the thrust of the word there. So you definitely, you get there's no misunderstanding here that God led him in, or, God allowed it to happen. God was kind of the one allowing this all, but it was Satan the one who was tempted him. So when he says, let no one say when he's tempted, I'm being tempted by God. God won't tempt you. God doesn't tempt you with evil. Does God allow temptation to come? Sure, he does. And so lead us not into temptation. I mean, it's like, and lead us not into evil. Can God, in a sense, lead you or allow evil in your life? Yeah, sure. So when we pray, lead us not into temptation, it's like, yeah, we want to avoid it. We don't want temptation. So it's kind of like, well, God, you're either going to allow temptation into my life or you're not. My vote is not. It's kind of like, Jesus, take this cup from me, but not my will, thine.
And yet, in the Old Testament, there are a number of places, maybe in the New Testament too, where it says God sent an evil spirit.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you reconcile that?
God does these things. So when the idea God is tempting me with evil, I mean, that's against God's character, his nature. He won't tempt you with evil. He might allow temptation in order to strengthen you, to harden you against that. God sends evil spirits God sent a messenger to Paul, messenger of Satan in his flesh. God sent that, right? It's not the focus I think that we take is like God is doing evil. It's like, no, he's using it. God will use everything for the good of his people, right? I think where it gets all mixed up is we see God using, like, an evil spirit or allowing evil, however you want to look at it, and say, oh, see, God he's sending evil or he's working evil. But it's like, no. the way I view it is like here's God in his perfect creation that he makes in 6 days. All right, perfect, awesome. Then he gives it over to us. Says take care of it, and we take it and drop it. And now it's all shattered, and it's still there, but it's all broken. So now we're all playing. So here we are playing in the broken shards of creation, and we're cutting ourselves all over the place, and we're just like, we're making the best of it. And God comes over, and he's going to try to do something with us, and he's going to use everything here to accomplish his good purposes. But he's using everything here. Well, what's there?
Shards.
Shards. So when we say like, yeah, he's going to use that, it's like, well, of course, that's what he's using. Now he does use like perfectly good, holy things like Jesus. He does use those too, but he also uses that. And so that's the hardest thing to kind of reconcile is that God he doesn't have to. He chooses to use this, what we broke, in order to bring about his purposes. And it's just that we always see just the brokenness of it. Like, how could God allow this to happen? Like, how could, I don't know if this is crass. Drunk driver hits a family and they all die. And there's children in the car. How could God allow that to happen? How could that person get drunk and drive?
Evil.
Right. It's like we look at it, we want to have an ultimate answer to this, like why? And it's like, well, God allowed it to happen. It's like, again, all these shards of brokenness, and then somebody made a very poor decision and caused, did God cause the accident? No, that drunk driver caused that accident. Did God allow it? Yes. To what end? For his purposes, for his good purposes, to increase faith so that we might, whatever. It's hard, it's difficult. This is going to seem like I think it's connected.
I guess we'll see the Concordia situation in that light.
Which doesn't make it any easier.
No, it doesn't.
Luther has a great quote.
Sorry.
Where he says, Satan is God's devil. Meaning, yes, Satan is a creature. Satan was not everlasting. He was a creation. He was a fallen angel. He was, we don't know when the angels were created, but it was at some point. The angels are not everlasting. So Satan is just a creature. He's part of creation. And Satan is God's devil, meaning Satan can't do anything that God does not allow. God can even use him. Where do we see that most clearly?
The cross.
Cross. Absolutely. Oh yeah. Well, yeah, Job.
That's the whole way of
Job is
describing
probably
it.
your most blatant example, because it's like all the actors are clearly right there. So yeah, true. I need to rephrase that better. But like where we see the ultimate picture of God using Satan to accomplish the greatest good, clearly the cross, because here Satan gets his wish. Right? Jesus dies. The Son of God dies. It's exactly what he wanted. Satan enters into Judas. Satan is behind it all, right? It's exactly what he wants. And God uses that to accomplish our salvation. So that's kind of where, Murray's not here, where we start talking theology of the cross kind of stuff versus theology of glory, is that we see in the cross how this all works out. So we see it in that we don't really understand it. We just know that the cross is where we see it. So that family who died, what good can possibly come from that? I don't know, but I know that God uses everything, even evil, to accomplish good. Don't know how, don't know why, a lot of times, but he does. Related, I think, is, so our Genesis, our Old Testament reading, is Abraham sacrificing Isaac. Great text. I mean, and it's so, of course, Rachel's not here today. It'd be fascinating to kind of get her, the Jewish perspective on like, how do you hear this? Because I know how we've heard this. I know how Lutherans and Christians teach this. And, of course, Abraham and Isaac, this is a type of God sacrificing his own son. You know, God will provide the lamb for the sacrifice, you know, and Jesus flashing in the background there. You know, Abraham is about to strike him, to kill him, and God says, oh, no, stop. And there's a ram in the thicket. Use that one. So the substitutionary sacrifice. You've got all of these wonderful, wonderful things going on. A lot of good theology here. What do you hear most, I guess, from people who have issues with this? Well, what's the difficult part of this? What's hard?
Why does it go so far as to bind
Right.
Isaac to the altar and to
Yeah.
the last second?
Why does it go so far? Why does he even do it in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you went a couple steps beyond. But I mean, this is a really tough one for people because, who is this God? This is a God who demands Abraham to kill his son. That's barbaric. Now, of course, we look at this and we say, oh, but, God was giving Abraham an impossible task. To kill your son, you've got to be a psychopath, right? Or you look at it and say, well, God gave him the promise that through his offspring, and not through Ishmael, through Isaac would be all his family, right? He would be the father of a multitude of nations through Isaac. How can that happen if Isaac is dead? So you push that and say, well, Abraham trusted in God. Somehow God would make it happen, whether by sparing Isaac or raising him from the dead. Somehow God would have to make it happen because he trusted God so much that it would happen. So Abraham becomes a nice little example. Have faith, trust in God no matter what. It's like, okay. That's fine for us. But for anybody else, people look at this and be like, this is barbaric. What kind of God does this? And then, well, what's God going to demand of you? If you're going to be faithful like Abraham, what does that mean for your obedience to God? So, what do you do with that?
Pray.
What's that?
Pray.
Pray. Pray and Jesus. The two safest answers in any Bible study. Yes, very good. I agree wholeheartedly. The fun thing is that did God demand this of anybody else?
Himself.
Well, himself. But are you Abraham? Did God promise you to be the father of all nations?
Yeah.
There are points in time and in the Bible where God does something that he's not going to do with other people. He's often doing things once that he will never do again.
Like Noah.
Like Noah. Like the flood. He promises, he actually says, I'm never doing this again.
But it also sets up types. I mean, the firstborn
Right.
is owed to God
Sure.
throughout
Absolutely. There's
remaining
definite
history.
types.
The
That's where that thick theology comes in, where we do see this type kind of thing established. And there is a lot of that in there. But there's also a certain point where we do look at this and say, you know what? I know God will never ask me to do this because I'm not Abraham. It's the challenge that we have of inserting ourselves a little bit too much into Scripture sometimes. The sacrifice of Isaac is not about us. I mean, it's about Abraham. And the fun thing is that you can't look at what God puts Abraham through and say, well, this is what he's going to put me through, or expect him to put us through. It's just, he's not. I know for a fact he's not. Because he already gave the promise, and it's fulfilled in Jesus Christ. So it's like, that's it. He's not going to come and do something different now. So it's one of these things where you don't look at this, and to kind of bring in Jim's point here, is that this isn't a good, for my money, it's not a good text to say, look at what Abraham does and how he acts, this is how you must do it. But to say, look what God has done. What he started with a special person, Abraham, and he was special. And he's a sinner, but he's still special. He's the patriarch, he's the father of the nations. Okay, he had a special place. Just like Mary. Why is she the blessed amongst all women? She's the mother of Jesus. She gets the bonus, right? It doesn't mean she's like special, like less sinful or whatever. It's just she was used for a specific purpose, and that's what sets her apart.
And that's pointing towards Jesus.
Yeah.
And
Exactly. And then that's to what Jim was saying. It's like, yeah, it sets up a type. It's pointing all of this, and the theology is like, yes, it points to Jesus
All through
clearly.
the Old Testament.
It points to this, and even if you wanted to try to glean something for us, this giving of the firstborn, is just this humble sacrificial nature of like not even my special, not even mine, but it is given to me by God, so therefore it is His, and there's a whole, you can go down a lot of roads with that. But this is about Jesus and not about us. It's about what God does for us through Jesus, using Abraham as a, kind of setting the tone, and like, this is what's going to happen. Because God hasn't done anything like this before. Abraham's pretty early on. God has shown judgment. He's flooded the world. He's smashed down the Tower of Babel. We've seen a lot of God's wrath. Because we've seen a lot of sin. Now God comes and He's saying, okay, yes, this is the problem, is sin. Here's what I'm going to do. And look, Abraham's going to be the beginning of this. And I'm going to show how I'm going to do this through Abraham. So it's not like God is going to come to you and say, yeah, go bind up your child, your firstborn, lay them on, get a knife. It's like, God's not going to do that because He doesn't tempt you into evil. And He's not tempting Abraham. Is He testing him?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Well, because God tests Abraham, does He test us? Yeah? But not in the same way. You just can't make that jump.
Because we don't have the faith of Abraham, we need Christ.
Well, I'd say Abraham needed Christ too. Yeah, it's nobody. Abraham's faith was amazing. It's always a funny
But it
thing.
says
Like,
that his faith was counted as
Righteousness, right.
So,
but and even that was not. If anything, you could probably point to that and say Abraham's faith had to have been from God. And you could pull yourself into it a little bit by saying, like, could you do it? Which is, I don't like doing that with these stories because, like, it doesn't matter. You're not going to have to. But, if you put yourself in that position, like, could you? Like, no.
Funny, the Jewish people didn't even open their eyes.
Well, Isaiah has a lot to say
All
about
through-
that.
All through the Torah, it's telling them.
Yeah. Well, we're no different.
No.
Like,
Us
My-
sinful.
my reaction with all the Concordia nonsense wasn't like faithful peace and contentment. I was pissed and I was like, brought to tears because I'm like, oh, my daughter, and my response was not faithful. My response this morning wasn't faithful when I was thinking about Concordia's president. I'm not going to talk about it much right now. It's because my response is not going to be faithful. I've got a lot of thoughts up here that are not very God-pleasing. We fail too. It's just that, we're here in the right place to get relief from that and to get the remedy. It's a fascinating thing going on here. It's it's just kind of like the challenge of not putting yourself too much in Scripture. Because you got to kind of remember, Scripture's not about you, it's for you. It's the old, you're not fighting a giant. You don't have any Goliaths in your life. Do you have challenges? Yes. Big scary ones? Of course. Can we use that as kind of a stepping stone to get to Jesus? Absolutely. But you're not David. And you don't have a Goliath. You don't have a big, mean Philistine trying to chop off your head. Why did that? Well, it was for you. Again, types of Christ. The humble, the shepherd boy who slays the formidable enemy. In the message today, Jesus in the wilderness. I take a little bit of liberty here to jump from Jesus in the wilderness. Why is He there? Like, away from the reading, just in general. Mark, Matthew, and Luke all record Jesus goes in the wilderness to be tempted. Why? Why is He there? What points are being connected? What dots are being drawn and connected here? So He's 40 days, right? So 40 days, what does this correspond to?
40 years.
Yep. So, what we see Jesus doing, so just the pure text, why is Jesus in there? Well, he's redoing everything.
It's replacing Israel.
He's replaced, yeah. Jesus is Israel reduced to one. You know, Israel in its basic form is the people called to be God's children. Well, Jesus is God's only begotten child, his beloved child, the only one, the only child who is obedient, submissive, humble, perfect, everything, right? So God calls Israel, and even this, Israel, you know, all the Old Testament, the people of Israel, what are they all pointing to? Jesus. So it's kind of fun in that, you know, Jesus is 40 days, points back to their 40 years. Meanwhile, the 40 years was always pointing ahead to Jesus. So you've got this really fun little kind of going back and back and back and back. But Jesus is there because they failed. I mean, the whole reason they're in the wilderness is because they failed, right? God said, here is the promised land. Here is my deliverance. And they're like, oh, no, scary. So they're cast out. What did they do in that 40 years? They're tempted, right? There's wilderness. There's nothing. We don't have any water. We don't have any food. We want to go back to Egypt. It's better back there. Moses, you suck. Go away. You know, they failed every temptation. Not all of them. There were some who were mean.
Oh, but ultimately they did fail because they didn't get in.
Right. Yeah. It took a whole new generation who never saw the promised land to begin with to go in. So now Jesus goes in, and it's a little bit compressed. He doesn't have 40 years. He's got to get things moving. So in 40 days, he is tempted, but he does it perfectly. Which is, what do they grumble about the most? Food, water? So what's the first temptation Jesus has? Yeah, turn the stone into bread, eat something. And Jesus is like, man doesn't live by bread alone, word of God. And then it's like authority, power. He's like, no. So he goes into the wilderness and he does this the right way. And so even in the whole scheme of like, what does Jesus do when he sees like a blind person? He gives him sight. He fixes what's broken. So he's kind of fixing, in a way, he's saying this is what it was supposed to be. Israel, which includes us, we were always supposed to be God's perfect little children, obedient and faithful. But because of sin, we can't. So here comes Jesus, a substitute for us, the one who does everything, who is perfect, who then now gives us his righteousness. So where they failed, he succeeds. And then he gives that to us. Yay. So now we have his perfect obedience, his faithfulness, his resisting temptation. So we fail at temptation often. I'm tempted to be angry at people in positions of authority in certain areas right now. I'm failing that. I'm giving into temptation in my mind right now. So I need Jesus to apply his perfect resisting temptation so that God does not judge me on account of my failure, but he judges me on account of Jesus's success. And so I can look at that and say, you know what? Because what I'm thinking right now is I'm operating out of anger. This is how I feel, and this is what's ruling me. And honestly, if I keep going down this road, I'm going to read some comments on Facebook today, and I'm going to go down a rabbit trail and see all these other people who are angry, and they're just going to magnify my anger. And I'm going to be like, yes, see, I'm right to be angry, and this is not right. And let's pitchforks and torches. And that's going to be my little
room.
Yeah. You'll see me over at the mall today. So it's like that's where I would go. But I need to be told today, yes, he did this too, he faced it, same stuff. So I say, you know what? Jesus knew about this, he faced it, and he succeeded. And I'm struggling with it right now. But you know what? As hard as it is, and I'm not even going to do this right, I'm going to lay this at the foot of the cross and say, you know what? I'm going to trust in God. that Jesus will lead us through this. Everything's going to work out in some way. And I'm saying it with my teeth like this because I know it's true, but I don't feel it right now. So I'm just going to believe and trust. And I'm going to try to, drown that Adam, that old flesh that wants to say, grrr, and we'll rest in him. And we'll do my best. And hopefully, and this is anecdotal, but honestly, that eventually that works. If I, again, this is kind of a common sense sort of thing. If I dwell in my sin, what am I going to stay in? My sin. If I force myself to acknowledge that Christ died for me and forgives me, and that this is not my thing to carry anymore, that he's actually removed all anger, resentment, whatever from me, then at some point I have to be like, well, fine. I guess I can't be angry then. And then I have to be, thanks Jesus for taking away my anger. And then I feel stupid. Because I'm like, why am I upset? Why am I upset that Jesus takes it away from me? I guess I don't need to be. Okay. All right.
It's really good to keep the resurrection in mind.
Oh yeah.
And to also see that beyond taking these things away,
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be something good.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. And and either to look at it like our wilderness, whatever that is. Maybe it's a big wilderness that goes on for a long time, or maybe it's a bunch of little wildernesses that we get out of one and we go into another one. Whatever it is. And this is where I take it into I take Jesus in the wilderness and I take it out a little bit, be like, and now where's our wilderness? But it's not to say you need to be, like Jesus. It's like, no. Jesus is there for you in that. You don't need to slay your Goliath. Which is usually with you're David, and what's your Goliath that you need to slay? It's like, okay, if you're David and you have a Goliath, then you're waiting for Jesus to come and deal with that. And in fact, that's what David and Goliath is. That's Jesus doing, all this good stuff. So there is a day where it's done and dealt with, and the resurrection is that. Short term, we say we live in that now. So yeah, you don't have to live in anger. You can live in resurrection and know that, well, okay. And if you really want to use Jesus as an example, you can say, well, everything, you can do everything right, and they'll still want to hang you on the cross. Jesus did everything perfectly, and how'd that end up? So there's a little bit of relief there, like, I'm not doing things quite well. But even if I did, I'd still screw up, and it'd still be a nightmare. So I'm going to cling to the cross. But yeah. So these are really interesting readings. So I've been wrestling with these all for the last half of the week. I've got a lot of thoughts. So today is we'll see how it goes.
Did you write your sermon?
Did I write it? Oh, well, yeah. Oh God, yes, especially today. I mean, in general, I write it out because I don't want to.
We don't want him to riff today.
Yeah, no.
You just ramble off a little bit.
Yeah. Then he'll be repenting all week long.
But did he write his sermon on Tuesday or Friday?
This morning.
This morning. Oh, okay.
Well, I wrote it out. I knew exactly what I was saying.
Part of the difficulty too, though, and I think part of what you get from the Abraham story, we gotta go.
No, we're good.
But the idea is you trust, but you're still acting.
Hmm?
Like Abraham had all that faith, but he wasn't just waiting to see what happened.
True.
Kind of. He was still working. The Concordia situation, not that we're discussing it, those who are working on it need to work on it in faith. If
Yeah.
you don't, you have to have faith
Right.
that those who are working. And it's hard to tell sometimes which is the worst burden to carry, to be the person
Yeah.
who actually has responsibility for, holy crap, this is all
Yeah.
down there, because I've been on that side of things, and then there's also the people who just don't know, and we all don't know, and I'm angry. I got nothing to do with the place,
Yeah.
and I've been reading about it, and I'm like, what moron was in charge of this? And I'll use that term. appropriately. You know, so I mean, there's still, yes, we trust in God, but we're still left foot, right foot. We gotta keep.
Oh, yeah. And then when, in 2 weeks, when the Board of Regents meets and a decision is made, which I don't have high hopes for, because it sounds like they're dug in. Then it's like, well, what then? Well, same thing. Faith. Keep, okay, next, you keep moving. Well, now it's like, it was going this way, now it's like, would you all? It's like, well, okay, well, at least you're going over there in faith. You're trusting the whole way. So yeah, it's good stuff today.
Who selects the Board of Regents?
Gosh, I don't know.
Usually part of them are the university, and then a few of them come through the
Synod?
convention.
Right.
Yeah. Usually you vote at the convention, but I don't think you vote for all of them. I think you vote for part of it, because that's the whole Texas problem.
Right, yeah.
Is they voted themselves into place, they changed the bylaws on their own and moved on.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, oh yeah, it is. Judge.
We're not even going to get into that, so everybody online,
Yeah, but
have
I
fun.
think-
We're going to discuss other
Yeah,
rating things.
but I think some of them are